what the Yankees fans were chanting at the Minnesota Twins. They were saying, Uber, Uber, but they weren't chanting that at the entire team. There was one guy, Randy Dobnak, the Game 2 starter for the Twins this year in the ALDS. We're going to talk about him in just a second because today's video is going to be very interesting. We're going to go through the players that I feel like have had a pretty crazy story in terms of getting to the big leagues. There are players that have been teachers, there are players that have been ski operators and janitors, and then of course, there was an Uber driver. So make sure you guys watch all the way until the end. It's going to be a pretty interesting video. I'm sure there's going to be one player on this list that you guys have heard of because everyone has seen the movie The Rookie, one of the best baseball movies that I've ever seen in my entire life, and I'm sure most of you can agree. So we'll talk about Jim Morris as well. But the first player on our list, I'm not sure where he went. He kind of ghosted us for 2019. Maybe you guys can update me down in the comment section down below. But Evan Gattis, I remember when he was called up, the announcers, they were going crazy because they talked about this guy's story. And I remember I was on my grandpa's couch thinking like, wow, how did this guy do it? So if you guys have never heard the story of Evan Gattis, back when he was in high school, he was one of the best all-around baseball players in the entire country. He got offers from Rice and Texas A&M. Texas A&M is a baseball powerhouse. He accepted the offer to Texas A&M, but he did not report, and the reason why is because of anxiety and substance abuse. He actually decided to step away from baseball, and then he took up jobs like ski operator, janitor. There was just, he wasn't himself anymore. Evan Gattis had lost himself, but of course, he went to rehab, and he eventually made it back to baseball. Evan Gattis was actually on the street asking for food. He was pretty much homeless, and then he enrolls in college, he makes the team, and then that same year, he's actually drafted in the 23rd round by the Atlanta Braves. So he plays a few years in the minors. Fast forward 3 years later, Evan Gattis makes his Major League Baseball debut as a rookie, replacing Brian McCann, who went down with an injury. He had 21 home runs, and eventually he signed with the Astros back in 2000, I believe 16 or 15, and then he won a World Series. So if we were going to talk about players that actually had a pretty crazy story and worked different jobs, if Evan Gattis was not in this video, you could pretty much click off and dislike it because you cannot make this without Mr. Gattis. So I want to go ahead and give him a quick round of applause. And for all of you people that are watching right now that are maybe working at Ford or you're working at a furniture place and your dream is to play baseball, football, basketball, if you have a passion for it, go pursue it because just like the other players on this list, anything is possible. I know that the majority of you have seen the movie called The Rookie. Again, it's one of my favorite baseball movies of all time. If you have not heard of it, I'll give you a quick little run through. Also, spoiler alert, I guess if you haven't seen the movie, I'm kind of going to tell the story of Jim Morris, but he was actually drafted in the first round back in 1984, but unfortunately, he had some arm injuries. He was a flamethrower from the left-handed side, and back in the day, not a lot of people could throw 97, 98 miles an hour, so he was an anomaly. But of course, like I said, the injuries got in the way and he retired from baseball in 1988. And what happened? He became a teacher. Yes, Jim Morris became a teacher. As you guys have seen from the movie, I might roll some clips, but the thing about it that is the craziest thing to me is he did not even want to play baseball again. He was giving a speech to his team and his team challenged him and said, you have to go back and play baseball. Like if you're going to tell us to pursue our dreams, you have to pursue your dreams. So Mr. Jim Morris said, you know, if you guys win district, I will try out for a professional baseball club. Guess what? His high school team won district. Jim Morris tried out for the Tampa Bay Devil Rays and he made his major league debut. After just so many years of not playing baseball, I remember watching this movie and thinking, wow, I cannot believe that this actually happened. He made his debut at 35 years old. He was throwing 95, 96 miles an hour. The next year he signed with the Dodgers and then ultimately he did retire from baseball after just 2 seasons. He appeared in 21 games, but I really feel like this just exemplifies Evan Gattis and our next player, Randy Dobnak of the Minnesota Twins, that again, if you have a passion, go for it. Also, especially if your passion is professional sports, because yeah, I think that baseball players make more than ski operators and teachers and Uber drivers. I wanted to go ahead and roll that clip one more time just to show you that Yankees fans, I'm not calling out Yankees fans. I think that they've always done this. Did you know that Zach Greinke's first name is actually Donald? So I'm pretty sure that Yankees fans will be screaming Donald at Zach Greinke. So it's nothing personal. It's just to try and get into the head and the psyche of the players. And I think it kind of worked because Randy Dobnak, before we talk about his story, he was roughed up a little bit in Game 2 of the ALDS. So maybe it worked. But before he was able to get roughed up by the Yankees, Randy Dobnak had one of the most improbable stories stories and comebacks to baseball that I've ever heard of. He was an Uber driver last year. He had a 4.99 rating, so not only is this guy a pretty good pitcher, he's one of the best Uber drivers out there. I don't really see 5s or 4.9s. It's usually like 4.8 or 4.75. This guy almost had a perfect rating, so he's a nice guy. He's good at baseball. And so yeah, he started the year as an Uber driver. He signed after playing independent ball. He was a Class A prospect. Then he went to AA. Then he went to AAA. And then eventually he made the 2019 Minnesota Twins roster and was so good, or at least, you know, Rocco Baldelli, the manager of the Twins, thought he was so good that he could start game 2. But the Yankees, their bats are far too good. That's all besides the point, though. I want to go ahead and tip my cap off to Randy Dobnak, because honestly, if you're an Uber driver and you're out of baseball, you're probably thinking, I'm not going to make it. And he did. I'm not sure if you guys remember this guy, but Daniel Nava was one of my favorite players growing up because of his story. When he was in high school, he was not recruited by any top-end college, or really any college for that matter. He ended up trying out for the Santa Clara College, and he was eventually cut, which meant that he had to be an equipment manager for 2 years. Once he was cut and was really unmotivated as an equipment manager, he could no longer afford to pay for tuition, so he had to transfer to a community college. The community college name was San Mateo, and his buddy on San Mateo said, you know what, Daniel, you rake, why don't you try out for the squad? Daniel Nava tried out for the team, he made the team, and he became a JUCO All-American, so he was raking, and I think the rest is history. We all know that the first pitch that Daniel Nava ever saw in Major League Baseball, he hit for a grand slam. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about, here it is.
Bases loaded, nobody out, and there's a drive hit deep to right field, way back, and it is gone into the Red Sox bullpen. How about that? A grand slam homer for Daniel Nava in his first Major League at-bat.
So we've seen Evan Gattis come back from being a janitor. We saw Jim Morris be a teacher, and then he followed his dreams to go back and play Major League Baseball. Randy Dobnak was an Uber driver, and then we saw Daniel Nava as an equipment manager. The only person that we're missing is someone who works in a grocery store, and that's exactly what Andrew Towles was doing 4 months before he was in the NLDS. Excuse me, Andrew Towles was actually in the NLCS, so he made it all the way to the championship series. A couple months before that, he was bagging frozen food at Kroger's, and I'm going to go ahead and read an excerpt from the New York Times because they described his situation better than I ever could. So if we take a look, this guy had to be up at 3:30 every day. It said, Andrew Towles said he had been assigned the early shift in the frozen food section. I had to get up at 3:30 to get there at 4 o'clock, said Towles, who is not a morning person. It was terrible. I had to go to sleep during the day and do it all over again, so it was rough. And then if we go down a little bit, we can see that his family was shocked. And then it says Towles had been working at the grocery store for less than a month when he fielded a more enticing employment offer. Gabe Kapler, the Dodgers director of player development, so he's now the manager for the Philadelphia Phillies. He remembered Towles as a dynamic two-way player with tremendous foot speed. Kapler emailed him to gauge his interest in participating in the Dodgers Instructional League. So obviously Andrew Towles, he took up that offer. The reason why Andrew Towles was kind of floating around the league and out of baseball is because he had a lot of personal demons and issues and stuff like that. There was actually a story that he left his Challenger, his Dodge Challenger at Dodger Stadium for like 5-6 months, and there was cobwebs and spiders all over it. So Towles, again, he's got some inner demons that he's had to overcome, but I just think that within the span of 6 months, he was bagging frozen food at 3:30 in the morning at Kroger's to hitting 318 in the postseason. So it's one of those stories where you just have to think, man, if I was in his shoes, do you think I would have been strong enough to make it? I think all of you are. You just have to put your mind to it. It's gonna be hard, but you know what they say, if it's anything worth it, it's gonna be a little bit difficult. So if you're doing something hard right now and you're kind of struggling, you know, it might be worth it. You know, something greener might be on the other side. So in my opinion, that pretty much wraps it up for the craziest stories that I could find. If there's anything that I missed, go ahead and let me know in the comment section down below. Maybe we can make a part 2, but there's still a few players that I wanted to bring up. Hall of Famer Jim Palmer worked at a clothing store called Hamburgers in the offseason. A week after the Orioles swept Sandy Koufax and the Dodgers, Jim Palmer, who was 20 years old at the time, his wife had just given birth and they bought a fixer-upper for a house. He reported for work at a clothing department where he sold suits and everything like that. So eventually he made the Hall of Fame, but before he did, he was beating Sandy Koufax at 20 years old and working at a clothing department. So I thought that was pretty crazy. Next up, we have a guy named Kenneth Lima. This guy ended his career with 156 home runs, but as you guys can tell by his baseball card, the very top, it's actually kind of funny and cool that they put this on the card. He worked as a gas station attendant, so I thought that was funny. And then last but not least, I don't know if this really counts, but Trevor May, who was one of the better relief pitchers this year for the Minnesota Twins. He's a Twitch streamer in the offseason, and I think he was trying to get into Twitch before he even started playing baseball. He's always been a big video game guy, so there you go. We've seen all the different players, whether they were a janitor or an Uber driver or a Twitch streamer or a gas station attendant. I just really wanted to make this video because Randy Dobnak, he inspired me. Who knows? Maybe if this video gets to 1,000 likes, I'll try out for UNLV baseball and maybe go back to college and play college baseball. And who knows, maybe in 20 years, someone might be making a video on how Fuzzy started off on YouTube. He challenged his subscribers to get to 1,000 likes, and then he got in shape and made the UNLV baseball team and then was drafted by the Pirates. I don't know, but that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. I will catch you guys later for a second upload. MLB The Show Mondays are back yet again. See you there. Peace out.